Let the church say amen.
Amen.
Say amen again.
Amen.
One time for the Holy Ghost. I can say that here, right? So I'm gonna do a spiritual. Before I do that, I want to just say a word about that particular genre. There are 4 types of spirituals. One is what was utilized as the codes, those lyrics and rhythms and melodies that sent messages from plantation to plantation. It was kind of like the internet of slavery. And then there were the didactic spirituals, you know. Children, go where I send thee. How shall I send thee? I'm going to send you one by one, one for the little bitty baby who was born. Most people think that that was a Christmas song. It really was a lesson in mathematics used to teach the children how to count. And then there were the sort of like the Time magazine of slavery, when they talked about what was actually happening in the society. Well, I met my sister the other day. I give her my right hand, and just as soon as ever my back was turned, she took and scandalized my name. Now, do you call that a sister? No, no. Do you call that a sister? No. Do you call that a sister? No, no. Y'all, she scandalized my name. Now, you wouldn't hear that on a Sunday morning at 11 o'clock, right? Obviously. But it really just kind of told the story of what was happening in the society. And then there was the sermonette. It's the way that the slaves actually learned scripture. And so here's an example of that. O Lord, what manner of man is this? All nations in him are blessed, and all things are done by his will. He spoke to the sea, and the sea stood still. Now ain't that a witness for my Lord? Ain't that a witness for my Lord? Ain't that a witness for my Lord? Soul is a witness for my Lord. Now there was a man from the Pharisees. His name was Nicodemus, and he didn't believe. The same came to him by night. He wanted to be taught out of human sight. Nicodemus was a man desired to know how one could be born when he was old. Christ told Nicodemus as a friend, man, you must be born again. He said, marvel not, man, if you want to be wise. Repent, believe, and be baptized, and then you'll be a witness. You'll be a witness. Now you'll be a witness. Soul is a witness for my Lord. Now you read about Samson from his birth, strongest man that ever lived on earth. Way back in the ancient times, he killed 10,000 of the Philistines. Well, then old Samson went wandering about, and Samson's strength was never found out until his wife sat up on his knees. She said, tell me where your strength lies, if you please. Samson's wife, she talked so fair. Samson said, cut off my hair, shave my head, just as clean as your hand, and my strength will come like a natural man. Y'all, Samson was a witness. He was a witness. Oh, Samson was a witness. Saul is a witness. Now, there's another witness. Y'all, there's another witness. And I see another witness. My soul is a witness for my Lord. Now there's another witness. And there's another witness. I see another witness. My soul is a witness for my Lord. My soul is a witness for my Lord.
Thank you, Cynthia Wilson. Well, there are a lot of witnesses for our Lord in this room today. So thank you for being a witness. At this time, Ugonna, Onuoho, is going to come and bring a prayer and a brief devotional for our beginning. Welcome, Ugonna. Good to see you.
Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. My name is Ugonna Onuoho, and I have served as a chaplain at Children's Medical Center. Last week, I got an email that said I had been there for 22 years. And so I made the joke. That I must have started when I was 12, because I don't think I've. But I wanted us to pray. I want us to, as I lead us in this prayer, because there is something that is dear to my heart, is grief. So you know that if you work as a chaplain in a children's hospital, grief is very close to what people experience when they need a chaplain. I also do have personal stories about grief as a person. But I want to call our attention to what I call lament. And I know that being people of faith, we know where lament comes from, where we have scripture, a portion of our scripture that is dedicated to prayers of lament in the Psalter, in the Psalms. And I think that when I look at how hard and difficult it is to live in this time as a person of faith, to answer the questions of why God allows what is happening in our world, that there has to be a way for us to direct the heaviness, the grief, the brokenness, the hurt, the pain that we feel to God. And I think lament is a way that David, who is credited for writing a lot of the Psalms, says for us to do. The one that calls my attention as I thought about saying this prayer is Psalms 55, verse 17. It says, "Evening and morning and at noon I will pray and cry aloud, and God shall hear my voice." Church, God hears when we pray, but God also acts when we act according to what God has said for us to do, resulting from prayers and spending time with God. So we, the church, must not be only people, church, that pray and lament and cry, but we must be the people who are so brokenhearted by the grief and the loss that is being experienced in our world that we will pray and we will act. Before I became a U.S. citizen, I am from Nigeria, a small country in West Africa. Small, they like to call themselves the giant of Africa. Yesterday, in a Catholic church, people gathered to worship, and 50 people were killed while they were worship. The place is called Oyo in Ondo State, in Nigeria. I think that we have stories, many more stories of things like that. And I think the psalm that gets to me in that is that how long shall we continue to tell these stories? How long can we continue to sit as the people that we read in our scripture? Jesus says, greater works shall we do than he did. So how long, not Texas Conference, clergy, and laity, how long shall we continue to sit and see the violence and the pain? Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, you have made known your vision and the work that you have called us to do in your words to us. You have called us to go into the world and become instruments of your peace. You have called us to follow the example of Jesus Christ, who was broken for our iniquity, who by his stripes we are made whole. Give us courage and wisdom to be broken and to become the places where peace, healing will occur. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Ugonna. Appreciate that very, very much. At this time, I meant to do this earlier this morning, just brief you on a couple of quick things. And one is, happened yesterday at the laity session, and something happened at the clergy session. First with the clergy session that happened a couple of weeks ago. So the North Texas clergy at the clergy session, overwhelmingly, and when I say overwhelming, I mean overwhelming because I do not think I saw a negative vote in the House. Passed a resolution which has been made public related to condoning hate crimes. I think it's important to remember that. That will appear in the journal of the annual conference because it is a record of what was done at the clergy session, which is a part of this annual conference. Secondly, yesterday, the laity at First United Methodist Church, Plano, at their session, adopted a resolution about gun safety. So what I want to say to you is, likewise, they have spoken out. And so I'm grateful for both bodies for doing the right thing. I want to say a special word of thanks for the laity who made that happen and began to work on that. I would say the same thing about the clergy who did that a couple of weeks ago. This is important. I want to say the passing of a resolution is important. But friends, if none of us do anything, I mean, if nobody does anything, it is just another, just make you feel good about where you stand. We got to do better than feel good about where we stand. And so I hope that we could covenant together in some ways. We won't do that today, but to actually do the important work that needs to be done about hate crimes and also about gun safety in our country. So I want to know that. Okay, so we're going to see where am I at this moment. I think that Ron Henderson and Sylvia Wang are going to be presenting on the journey towards racial justice. Our journey toward racial justice, as y'all are coming to the front, am I correct? And then also part of the racial DEI work that Dr. Henderson is doing as well. So thank you. Thank y'all.
Hello, everyone. It is so great to see your smiling faces after lunch. It's good to see you. My name is Reverend Sylvia Wang. During the day and evening and in the weekends, I serve as pastor at First UMC Archer City out in the Northwest District. And I also serve on various conference capacities. Today, I am speaking to you as chair of the North Texas Conference Journey Toward Racial Justice. The Journey Toward Racial Justice team continues its work to end active and passive racism. And the hope and the dream, the priority is to provide and create equity, an equitable future for all people in the North Texas Conference, including the churches, within the churches, as well as the communities that we serve. For the full written report, please see the JTRJ report in the annual conference workbook. I would like to highlight a few updates since the report was submitted. It was great to attend and be part of the virtual National Cross-Racial, Cross-Cultural Ministry Spring event that was held for 2 days at the end of April 2022. This special event, a multi-year training, has gathered numerous laity and clergy from across the United States for a 2-day workshop full of worship and learning and engagement. We gained deeper understanding and provided resources for pastors serving in cross-racial, cross-cultural appointments, as well as laity and church leaders receiving pastors in cross-racial, cross-cultural appointments. Today, many of us experience the joy and the privilege of serving with each other through a Project Unity Together We Dine experience. What a rich experience that it was. Thank you so much for all involved who brought this to fruition that help us to grow and move together in our joint journey toward racial justice together. Thank you for the facilitators and Project Unity for guiding us. Thank you for being part of this special experience to talk about race in a safe space so that we might learn more about each other. But as you know, rich, wonderful conversations by themselves are not enough. We need to continue to learn and to cross boundaries to reach people that might look different from us, that we need to learn more about and simply listen. I share with my table that a question I received or a statement made me feel really bad, not today, but in my context. I spoke about experiencing racism, and somebody said to me, "I'm sorry that you feel that way." And immediately I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know how to say it or how to respond. I felt really sad and just felt very teared up inside. I didn't tear up in front of this person. And I gained more knowledge in speaking with others to say that that person did not validate your experience. In fact, that person tore down your experience, did not hear your story. And I want to say that our stories, whether preached or taught or as testimony, nobody can refute. That is your story, regardless of your racial background, but race is important, and color is important. It is important to see color so that we see the full person. I want to share with you a bit of my personal journey. I grew up in Richardson, Texas, and attended throughout the school system, and I'm a proud graduate of L.V. Berkner High School. Go Rams. I never did that as a high school student, so I might as well do that almost 30 years later. And so I left Texas right after high school to attend college out of state for a variety of reasons. And one reason, main reason, was to get away from Texas as far as I can. Yes, I did have family issues, which I would happily say, by God's grace, I have received full reconciliation within my family of origin. And then God brought me back to Texas, of all things, to leave my lucrative career as a trial attorney with the federal government and all its headaches, so that I may serve in the North Texas Conference as a United Methodist pastor and to be in relationship and covenant with all of y'all. Did you hear I said y'all? I vowed when I left Texas is I'm going to say you all and never say y'all. But y'all is just so much more relaxing to say. And it's helped me to build bridges in my context of Archer City and Archer County, and I love the people dearly there. I want to tell you, I left Texas, now I know, in part due to the racism I experienced here growing up. I grew up in a racially diverse school district, yet now I also know racism tore apart my parents, caused harm to my family, and caused problems for myself and my family members as I grew up as a small immigrant, young immigrant in the United States. English is not my native language. 我会讲国语和台语，不过你们听不懂。大家有一些人会听得懂，不过很多人会听不懂。What I just said was I speak Mandarin and Taiwanese, and those are my languages. I said a lot of you may not understand what I say, some of you may. And so I have come, thanks to Bishop Michael McKee, a few years ago, I have come to re-embrace my roots, my background, and whom God has created me to be, with full racial embracement of my identity, of my language and background, my immigrant story with all its pain. I identify as a Chinese, Taiwanese, American female pastor. And I want to share with you that I have cried so much in the last 2-3 years, as many of us have. To go through the roots of who we are, how we grew up is hard. But I'm thankful for this journey, to serve on this journey with you, to know that the journey toward racial justice is hard work. It's built on relationships and bringing down barriers. It's to listen to another person and not to say, I don't understand your accent. It's to know that don't ask, especially Asian American Pacific Islanders, where do you come from? Where are you really from? I say to people, I'm from Texas. Now, if I like you more, I'll say I'm from Taiwan. So I like you all, I tell you, I'm from Taiwan originally. And so what I want to say to you, I do have a point here, is that racism is real. I have experienced personal and systemic racism growing up. I have fought really hard to become valedictorian of my high school. I received the education and the discipline from my parents because they don't have much. Through that, I have tried to use my intellect as my armor to the point that I did not like white people. And so I want to let you know racism is real. I am confessing and working with God, by God's grace, to release the racism I have in my heart and the biases I feel about white people and other persons of color. Racism is real. Persons of color today, even now, experience racism. There is deep pain across the conference. I have learned much about myself and about all of us together. There are divisions, yes, but we also know that we have the courage from the Holy Spirit to cross the aisle to shake the hands of people. And from my district, we learned to look at each person in the eye, say, "How are you?" and shake your hand. We need to do that in issues of race, into building relationships. It is our personal and collective responsibility to end racism. And I'm so encouraged by today's event with Together We Die and all the work among all the partners in the journey to racial justice, and to the anti-racism team in the North Texas Conference for the 20+ years that many of us have served as clergy and laity. The work to stop racism did not just start 3 years ago. So I want to affirm all of your presence and your work in all these years. The work is not yet done. Let us continue to build bridges, to seek to listen to each other's life stories with open hearts and no judgment. Let us seek to listen and understand more deeply. We need each other. Wherever we come from, wherever we are born, whatever our skin color and characteristics, however our color of our hair might look like, whatever our features might look like, whether we look young or older, we need to see each other as a precious child of God, redeemed by the blood of Jesus Christ, entitled to full personhood, and how we need to let go of our biases, and it starts with our hearts. Look to God, the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. For guidance, we look to our brothers and sisters in our local church and community, and in the wider church through the annual conference. Y'all don't give up hope. We need to do this together, and we may chip away at racism bit by bit, but we can do it because we can change and respond to God's grace, starting with our own heart. I am grateful for you. I'm grateful to serve with many of you. I'm grateful for Dr. Ron Henderson. And at this time, we will transition to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Report.
Bishop McKay, who's a good friend of mine, felt the need to come up and tell me that the applause was not for me, but for Sylvia. Which I knew. But good afternoon. Over the last year, I've been working and see how we can grow a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and had been working on a number of things that we create this culture in North Texas that reflects diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then last night, I came to our opening worship service that certainly reflected diversity in a great way. But not only diversity, it reflected equity and inclusion, because diversity would merely be inviting everybody to the worship service. But inclusion would mean inviting others to the worship service, but not only inviting them to the worship service, but inviting them to help plan the worship service. And not just plan the worship service, but to plan the worship service from their perspective and with different genres, as we witnessed last night. And I thought if I could take a picture of us as a conference on last evening in worship, and we lived out that every day. Hello, somebody. then we would have reached this culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion. But since I made a report, I'll go ahead and give it anyway. Last night would be the pitch of it. 1 year ago, I began this journey as Director of Racial Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the North Texas Conference. As the past year has been one of grasping new understanding, growing through enlightenment and disappointment, I understand that my journey of diversity, equity, and inclusion is like many people of color relative to this journey, in that it is not a new journey for us, but for people of color, it is a lifelong journey to that promised land that mirrors the Garden of Eden, where at the creation of humankind, men and women, there was diversity, equity, and inclusion. Genesis 1:26 through 27 reminds us that God created humankind in God's image. God created him male and female. He created them, and God said to them, be fruitful, multiply. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is the starting point born from the wisdom of God. And diversity, equity, and inclusion originated with God, who looked over all that God had done, and God said, it is good. This first year has required a lot of study, investigation, research, visits, listening, and planning. Early on, I observed that institutions that have a commitment and a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion have a CEO who is committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, not only in the workplace, but for its constituents, members, subgroups, and what's going on in their communities. For example, inasmuch as I am the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the North Texas Conference, in a real and practical sense, Bishop Mike McKay is our Chief Diversity Officer. Diversity and inclusion does not happen unless the CEO is committed to diversity and inclusion, and our bishop is committed. For example, relative to clergy in our conference 10 years ago, I shared with him earlier that he stole some of my thunder, but that's okay. We think alike. We were one of the oldest conference in the connection in terms of clergy age. Bishop McKay made it a priority that we would get younger. Today, 10 years later, we are one of the youngest in the connection relative to clergy. Recruiting younger clergy of color was a commitment, and now it's happening and existing. Every year for the last several years, we have had persons of color, male and female, who are either commissioned as a provisional elder, deacon, or ordained as an elder. Creating opportunities to serve and to have opportunities for growth, leadership, and increased salaries are priorities of the bishop and our cabinet. The commitment is being realized in our conference. Check this out. For the conference year 22-23, when the appointments are read this year, we will have 38 cross-cultural, cross-racial appointments in the conference, and an additional 3 cross-racial appointments in extension ministries. I go, wow, that's pretty good. In other reports, you will hear that I will share our commitments and strategies to grow visionary, vital black churches, as well as growing visionary and vital churches of other groups in our conference. Our bishop is committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, not only in the conference, but in the broader community. Whatever affects the members, the people of color in our conference, our bishop always has a word where he is involved in the community. As the director of DEI, I interface with our center directors and district superintendents in order that we will assist each other and move the needle of growing a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I am convinced as I work with our DSs and center directors that we all are committed to this Garden of Eden-like environment where everyone is welcome and embraced as they are without trying to change them to look like who they are not. And so we're moving toward creating this atmosphere. In the upcoming year, I borrowed the words from Stephanie K. Johnson that the emphasis of our diversity, equity, and inclusion will be to inclusify, to develop inclusive leaders. And that is to live and lead in a way that recognizes and celebrates unique and dissenting perspectives while creating a collaborative and open-minded environment where everyone feels he or she belongs. This is the work of DEI, to create this culture and environment in North Texas. I'm grateful for the collaboration of all of our cabinet and our bishop and each of you. Thank you. Sylvia and I are going to have a brief word. The bishop has already said, made a commitment. We were going to share with you how horrified, how appalled we are at the hate crimes that are taking place across America against people of color. And not only are we horrified at the hate crimes that are taking place against people of color, we are equally horrified and appalled at the silence of the church in the midst of this. We have shared with our bishop, and so he has shared that we will do more than pray, and we will do more than write resolutions, and we will do more than write letters. And so we will yield to his leadership. As a conference, we respond strongly to the evil of hate crimes against people of color. I've learned recently, should have already known it, that the purpose of evil is never to destroy bodies or to reduce buildings to rubbish, as we have seen in Ukraine. But the purpose and the goal of evil is to destroy our spirit, to destroy our hope, to destroy that which is in us. And so as people of God, we cannot let the evil without come within. And so we are not afraid of evil, and we're not afraid to call evil what it is. And so we look, Sylvia would also have a word, but we look forward to our bishop as he leads us as a people of God, that we will look evil in the face and that we are not afraid of evilness.
I speak based as a Asian American Pacific Islander female, is that the stereotype is that we don't speak up. I share with you briefly that I am still a lawyer. I'm not practicing in Texas or elsewhere. So I have learned how to speak up, but in difficult ways. The training was hard. I want to raise up awareness that stereotypes of any kind are not permissible. Is that it starts with stereotypes, and then jokes about Asians eating cats and dogs harm. It starts with people making fun of our eyes and the shape of our eyes and the size of our eyes. It starts with jokes about Asians working on the railroad and the sounds that make becomes a derogatory racist term against the Chinese. I want to share with you is that sometimes innocent chatter and laughter are not innocent chatter and laughter. As we grow more in our understanding of what persons of color face in various groups, and my understanding as a lived experience is as an Asian American female, I'm getting to know my brothers and sisters in the Latinx, Hispanic community, in the Black community, Black church community, Native American community, as well as something I thought about just this year, biracial, multiracial communities, adoptee communities. List goes on, and I do not like categories, but that's what we have to live with. And we need to learn who we are, transcend the boundaries, while affirming the uniqueness of who God has made us to be, in my case as an Asian American female. So I want to share with you from Matthew chapter 5, verses 21 to 26. Jesus taught about anger. How anger, paraphrased by myself, that goes into the heart and becomes murder or a sense of hatred, that is also sin. How that, brothers and sisters, we may be unintentionally murdering our other brothers and sisters, and in this situation, persons of color. And how we need to be careful when we judge others is to look within first ourselves. How we meditate on Scripture so that we might grow in grace according to the leading of the Holy Spirit, and we might work to understand the realities and the real experiences and the facts, the experiences of that all persons of color experience in the United States and worldwide. Learn what that's about without judging. As we grow in grace, we extend arms of grace without judging others, because what happens is that hate is so easily born out of ignorance and good intentions. And when carried out, it harms and divides and creates fear and leads to our need to protect ourselves by our own means rather than relying on the Holy Spirit. Hate starts with our own hearts, and so I invite us to soak in the words of Jesus from the Sermon on the Mount found in Matthew chapter 5, and help us to be released from fear and from hate, and learn to grow our partnerships within the churches and beyond our churches, so that we might think of practical ways in social holiness, how we might work for good in our communities, our state, our nation, and our world. For we are all connected, as the Lakota people would say. We are all connected, and we need each other. No person is an island. I am here due to your grace, the grace of our bishop and grace of God, and be able to stand before you with these words to say, let us go to Jesus, but let's practice the words of Jesus lived out in personal and social holiness, in social action, to transform all of our world, one bit at a time. Thank you.
So before the next item, we've had some powerful images created for us today, especially this afternoon. So what I'd like for us to do is just in silence, for each person in the room, begin to not just a prayer, but what action would you do? What would you do? Then I'm going to close that with a prayer, but let's take a minute or two to do that, just in silence. Let's begin. Holy God, we've heard about the difficult work that we still must do. Difficult work that will be less difficult if we're aware of your deep, abiding presence, of the movement of your Spirit in our own lives and the lives around us. And oh God, we will also be moved to action by the voices of the North Texas Conference who have shared so openly and transparently about their own experience. Perhaps for some of us, as for me, realize even the misguided, unintended pain. Holy God, forgive us. Holy God, challenge us. Holy God, spur us into action. Holy God, may we become who you really want us to be. In the name of Christ, I pray for all of us. Amen. So at this time, we're going to have an offering of the, by the way, not an offering, but an offering of the retiree videos. And then after that, I'm going to introduce Bishop Palmer. Thank you.
I would say all the different people I've met in different churches that I've served. I came from a different denomination, so I've really enjoyed confirmation classes and disciple Bible study, all of the various studies actually that's offered to us in the United Methodist Church.
Since I've been a chaplain, I have to say, for me, that has been the most meaningful. It has brought together my gifts and my pastoral call to be present with others. I've had the joy, and also it's also difficult to be with persons in the most vulnerable times of their lives, and in the local churches as well as in chaplaincy, how people open up and trust you.
Being a member of the District Committee on Ministry, and as a bivocational and a local pastor, I was in those meetings, and I'm still a member of the committee. I learned so much from the elders, the deacons that are there, from the laity, and from the candidates that are coming through. And it's just an amazing experience seeing what the Holy Spirit's doing in all of those lives and learning. And then it helped me in my local context. I brought back from those meetings so much information and such joy.
That I was ordained with 3 deacon women is especially meaningful for me. I've been in church my entire life, but I did not see an ordained woman for my first 30 years. And so then that changed when my children's preschool happened to have a United Methodist Church attached to it. And so from then on, I've met gifted clergy women who have become friends and mentors, and then helped me envision responding to my own call to ordained ministry.
One of the tools that became available to us in chaplaincy over this time of pandemic and isolation was utilizing video equipment to be able to connect families and patients together. And that, I'm not tech savvy, and I thought, oh my gosh. But I opened myself up, and there it was, a way to connect family and the person. And for me, that's the key here in terms of connecting with the mission field that we have, utilizing those tools that are available to us.
I've discovered that the different things that we've done to different churches, what one church does may or may not work in your church, but it can be adapt. And I think the 2 words that I believe are important, whatever a church and people do, is they need to be adaptable, and they need also to be readily available to listen. Did I say listen? Yeah, to listen and to be able to interact with the people.
When we make opportunities for people to gather as community, that the Holy Spirit steps in and does amazing things. So just provide a space for people to gather in fellowship, study, in service, to form relationships, and see what the Holy Spirit does with that.
Get involved with your city council because they have their ear to the ground, know what's going on. And the church needs to be a vital part of the civic affairs. One of the first things I did at First Church was I made an appeal to the congregation. Said, folks, city council of this city needs people to serve on their boards and commissions. We need to step up. It's going to be a tough road. It is. But it's an important road. And to be honest with yourself and trust the laity, trust your colleagues, reach out to them. You know, when you are in that desert, there's a plane flying overhead. Wave to it. You need help. And that's something that's so incredible. The love that you'll feel within your local church. There are people that are willing to listen, that are willing to pastor you. And that's so important.
I would encourage the ordinands to connect with their clergy colleagues. Stay connected, celebrate together, and support each other. And also to pay attention to the ministry and the wisdom of experienced clergy and laypersons. Hear their stories and use what you bring that's fresh and new for this day and time and blend it with what you can glean from those who have helped pave the way. And then finally, I would say be authentic, be humble, be grateful, be hopeful, and joyfully be who you are as a beloved child of God.
Please remember that the lay people you serve have been there, many of them a lot longer than some have even been alive. And so trust your lay people, listen to your lay people, love them as best as you can. I admit that there are some people that are hard to love, but that doesn't mean we don't love, because God has said, love me, love your neighbor. Jesus said, you need to love one another so that other people know that you are my people.
When I did my address before the annual conference, and when I was coming in as an ordinand, I used, it's a hymn that's very important to me, and it's the Lord of the Dance. Those of you who are in the conference may know that I'm a liturgical dancer, but that phrase, that verse that says, dance, dance wherever you may be. I am the Lord of the dance, and I'll lead you all wherever you may be, and I'll lead you all in the dance. And again, just like those words from Here I Am, Lord, that for me has been a call and a reflection. That circle of life. We know the story of Jesus, our Christ, from birth to life to death to new life. And remember, in your journey, you will move from birth, new relationships with going to new churches, going to new mission fields, to life and living that life with those people. And remember in your journeys to connect with your other clergy, connect with persons to provide you counseling, connect with places where you can get the support you need so that in your moving from birth to life to death to new life, you will find the support to continue in this journey that God has given you.
So we've come to the time in which Bishop Gregory Palmer will be speaking to us. He'll be with us this afternoon and again tomorrow as well. So he's helping us in terms of our identity and a number of things about what it means to be a Wesleyan. Let me say a few just personal words about Bishop Palmer. Bishop Palmer is a good friend, and I want to say to you that he and I, along with his wife Cynthia, spent 2 weeks in Costa Rica studying Spanish. To be honest, I think Cynthia Palmer actually did better than Bishop Palmer and I did. And what I want to say is it was a great 2 weeks, and enjoyed that time together as I tried to get my Spanish in much better shape, which the pandemic has utterly ruined, but I want to say that. The other thing is that Bishop Palmer's been with us before. He was with us at the Clergy Covenant Day in the year 2000, one of the last things that happened in the North Texas Conference publicly before the pandemic happened about 6 weeks later, or we became known of it. Bishop Palmer, I think, is one of the wisest people I know. He has such a background, I think, in terms of the church, the United Methodist Church, our history, and the Christian history, and just knows how to present and just say some things that could be very helpful. So I know that that will happen. Of course, Joan and I enjoy the Palmer's friendships, and frankly, I just want to say, Bishop Palmer, welcome to North Texas again. We are so glad you're here. Will you welcome Bishop Gregory Palmer with me?
Thank you, Bishop McKee, and to all of you who are the members of the North Texas Annual Conference, lay and clergy, leaders and followers alike. It's a great privilege to be here with Bishop McKee, to be in this great tabernacle. So to Dr. Oliphant and the team here at this local church, thanks be to God for you and for your ministry. I think I can best say about the kind words that you said, you were right about Cynthia doing better than I did. I'm not going to say about whether she did better than you did, because you're way down the pike from me. And in fact, as I was giving a homily on yesterday back in Ohio on the day of Pentecost and talking about language, and so if you think of Acts 2, I said, you use or you lose. And so that certainly happened to me more so than it likely happened to you, Bishop McKee. But thank you, and to the team that you work most deeply with. The person I've come to work with the most on this has been Pastor Andy Lewis. And but you know that you have a great leadership team. I did tune in as soon as I landed last night, and I did a little reconnoitering. I think I'm not the only speaker in the house that reconnoitered. I heard Bishop Harvey's homily. I heard Pastor Henderson this morning, and I heard Bishop Mike's Episcopal address. And so I want to say, if you're not inspired and encouraged, you ought to be. Because you're hearing some wonderful narratives of what's happening and of possibilities for the future. And this report that we just received from Pastors Henderson and Wang were just fabulous. And I'm just grateful for what I heard and the power of this truth-telling in a context of love, support, and encouragement. And when you know that you have love, support, and encouragement, you can accomplish almost anything. So let me frame this up. I've got 3 opportunities with you. And like any wise preacher, I don't need to say it all in each one. Amen? So I got plus. Now, secondly, you're behind schedule. And and this room needs to be turned around for the service of ordination and commissioning. Now, don't get too excited. I'm gonna be up here more than 5 or 10 minutes, so don't get too excited. But I may do a little cutting and pasting as I go. But actually, that helps me to discipline myself to sort of think of this in 3 movements. It feels downright Trinitarian and what have you. So today I want to talk to you about doing time in the wilderness. And you may wonder what that has to do with vision. You can decide later if it has anything to do with vision. Tomorrow I want to borrow a phrase from a famous author, Margaret Wheatley, and pick up on the theme, who do you choose to be? And then my second time tomorrow, I want to pick up on the notion of grace at the margins, okay? So it doesn't have to all happen in one. I get 3 shots at you, and I'll try to not get you any further behind schedule than you already are. But everything you've already invested, and from what I've been able to see online and to spend time with you in the flesh, has been well worth it. What would you cut out? I mean, what would you cut out? You would be missing something if everything that had not come to pass and been said had not been said already. So let's begin with a word of prayer. Would that be all right? Amen. Drop thy still dews of quietness till all our strivings cease. Take from our souls the strain and stress, and let our ordered lives confess the beauty of thy peace. Grant in this moment and in all of the moments of our lives, O God, that the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts will indeed find acceptance in your sight. O thou who art our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. I happen to be one of those people, I assume all of us does this in one way, shape, or form, whether or not we're conscious of it or not, that has a framework, a lens, a template, and you can go on and on with a long list of synonyms through which we see our own lives, we see the lives of others, and through which we see the lives of the things in which we're deeply and intimately involved. And in one sense, we see the church through that lens, and in another sense, I would say the church is the template, is the framework, is the framing narrative through which I see my life and I see the world. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm not saying it's good or bad. And it is not to sanitize or make more noble the church than the church is, particularly in its institutional form. On the other hand, the idea and the aspiration of, think about it, of being the body of Jesus Christ and being witnesses to the crucified and risen Messiah is one heaven of a framework through which to see life. One's life personally, the life of the church, and I want to say the life of the world. And I speak not about a triumphal Christianity that is seeking to dominate in ways in which the church has done. And by the way, the chickens have come home to roost. And we are paying a terrible price for the domination, the imperialism, the patriarchy, and all of the other isms that church as institution, but really religion run amok, has screwed this world up. Have I got any witnesses in the house? I don't want you to feel bad. I'm not going to be that long, but we got to own our stuff. So I'm talking, this is not United Methodist per se, but I'm not hating on any other church either. This is all about a love talk about our life together. But through the ups and downs of our lives, personally and familially and community-wise and institutionally, we've got these lenses that we put on things, and sometimes they shift as we move through life. I think when I look at Scripture, I think there are sort of these epochs and these movements through which God's people Israel and God's people in Christ, and we continue to write the book of Acts, but through which we have seen our lives. And sometimes we can only see it by looking back, but sometimes, and maybe it's more true in a flat world, I don't know, we are able to perceive what has gone on with us and or what is going on with us now. One of those metaphors, templates, lenses, framing narratives that I think that I have found helpful has been the narrative and the framework of thinking about what's going on now as a time of being in the wilderness. I think our church is in the wilderness. I think our society is in the wilderness. And sometimes we think that's a bad thing. In fact, Bishop McKee and Bishop Whitfield, who I'm also delighted to see, if there's any other bishops in the house, God love you and God keep you. In the fall of 2019, Bishop McKee and Bishop Whitfield, we were in a Council of Bishops meeting at Lake Junaluska. Didn't have any more face-to-face meetings after that, as I recall. And we were in the midst of a closed executive session. There was a robust conversation going on about lots that was going on in the United Methodist Church. And you pay your money and you take your choice, but we've got a pretty short list of what I call usual suspect conversations. I mean, we're frankly not all that creative as United Methodists. I can name at least two we've been talking about for 50 years. Hello, somebody. And we can't seem to get off of that string. It's not a matter of where you're positioned around it. We just can't seem to get off that string. And so one of the bishops in the midst of that conversation, it was a kind of an open mic time, as I recall. And one bishop stood to the microphone. Tears were running down his face. He spoke until his voice cracked, and then he cried out and said, "We're in a wilderness." And I don't like it. We are in a wilderness, and I don't like it. He had seized upon this image, this word, wilderness, as a metaphor, as a placeholder, as a way of describing what he was feeling, what he was seeing in the life of the United Methodist Church at that, but I would say it continues at this particular time. Now, tonality means everything. We're in a wilderness, and if tears are running down your face and your voice is cracking, it's probably not a good thing. It's got a negative connotation, and many of the biblical scholars, and that would be some of you in the room, no doubt, have talked about wilderness, and you've heard the descriptions of some of the noted ones who referred to wilderness as an inhospitable place, as a hostile environment. I mean, we don't tend to think of our going into the wilderness, and in most cases, we don't tend to think of when we see the movements of the people of God, or even in the life and ministry of Jesus, of going into the wilderness as sort of like you'd say, hey, coach, put me in. Send me out there, do it as soon as possible. I can't wait to get there. I mean, you don't tend to think of it in that way. And so I thought, as this bishop was pouring out, and I haven't been able to get it out of my head since November of 2019, I want to say I actually kind of agree. It framed some things in a single word. It spoke to me about where we found ourselves, the condition we found ourselves in. And then, after that, 8-12 weeks later, COVID entered our vocabulary. And unless you were an epidemiologist, that's not something you had contemplated before, the nuances of coronaviruses. And then some other things began to reel off. More people seemed to be unjustifiably killed, and particularly at the hands of law enforcement. And that came to I don't know if I want to call it a summit or a bottoming out in one man in uniform in Minneapolis with his knee on another human being's neck, unarmed, crying out, "I can't breathe," for 9 minutes and 46 seconds. And I said, you know, that unnamed bishop was absolutely right. We are in a wilderness. And one angle of view is, one interpretive lens is, one way to hear the tonality is, that's not really a good thing. But then I hit pause. I actually opened the Bible. I know we bureaucrats are accused of not tending to scripture and doctrine, but I don't know how I'd make it without it. God's word in scripture and God's living word in the risen Christ. Oh, let me not get detoured on that. I need to go slow. And I began just informally, not in any terribly organized way, just first out of my own head, going to some sections of scripture around wilderness. Naturally, I started in the Hebrew Bible, and there were many, many places in which wilderness was a theme. Sometimes the word that shows up, it seems to be used almost synonymously with desert. Not always, but sometimes. They were in a desert wasteland. Does that phrase leap out at you? But then I said, what's the point and what's the purpose and what are the people up to and what is God up to? And I began to pick up another set of lenses. When I was a kid, by the way, this will work for you preachers and those of you that teach Bible study. It'll work in your life. I used to, when I was first taken to the optometrist. So I was been wearing glasses since 3rd grade. So those of you that are keeping score, I'll be 68 in a couple of weeks. So you can figure out how long that's been. And I don't not wear them. I don't take off and put on just any pair of sunglasses because I can't see. They've got to be prescription. If I want to play racquetball with glasses on, I either got to cover these up with goggles or they've got to be prescription athletic glasses. So that's just useless information. It won't buy you a cup of Starbucks. But I remember going to Dr. Smith's office at 1515 Girard Avenue in the city of Philadelphia. And he had, you sat in the chair and you didn't have all this digitized stuff when the optometrist or ophthalmologist puts the lenses up on you and just clicks a few buttons and flips it. You had all of these lenses that were in these little chutes, these organizing chutes. And you'd put this big kind of, this frame that made you look like Dr. Cyclops. And he would keep trying combinations to see if you ended up seeing anything. Anybody got glasses about 60 years ago? Help me, somebody. Yeah. I mean, I know your average age, Ron told us, is going down, but I'm looking out at you. Some of you had the same experience. Amen. And he had this monotone voice. It was very gentle, but it was flat. And every time he would try a different combination, and he'd put them in, and I don't know how many he could get in on each eye, and then he would say, Gregory, better with or better without. Now, basically, they're still saying the same thing. You with me? Better with, better without. Well, I was at 8 years old about to crack up and say, who is this fool? And could he pep it up a little bit? But he got me squared away and been wearing them ever since. So if the lenses around wilderness desert places are all about its inhospitableness and its negativity, and it's a place you don't want to be, that'll be the way in which you and I continue to see it. But if the lens we put on, or the combination of lenses that we put on, say, could God be up to something even in the wilderness seasons? But let me take the word even out of it and say, especially in the wilderness seasons. Who is God and who are we, and what might God be up to? Now, you don't have a lot of time for a lot of litany and recitation of scripture, but you just think about God's people, Israel, coming out of chattel slavery, and they head pretty quickly into the wilderness. The whole book of Numbers, the Hebrew word is, it's the book of the wilderness. I know most of you have preached long series of sermons out of the book of Numbers, but the fact that you haven't doesn't mean it's not there. Maybe we haven't done it because it's just too much work. It's too hard. I mean, everybody wants to preach about the alternative group of spies that go into the land after the other group comes back and says, listen, there are giants in the land. We couldn't possibly do or be anything over there. And an alternative point of view comes back and says, yeah, there are giants in the land. The fruit is lush, succulent, larger than we've ever seen. Let us go up, for we're well able and we can take the land. They had a different viewpoint, so you may want to pay a little more attention. There's a little more of that in Numbers than you and I have given attention to, than some of these highlights. So when I began to think about this, what is God up to? They come out of Egypt, out of chattel slavery. They have a praise meeting on the other side of the river, and then almost immediately they're in the wilderness. When you think about the exile period out of which the writings of 2nd Isaiah comes, and you listen to that word in the 40th chapter, and there are many words there and many images. You could preach a revival just out of the 40th chapter. But talking about the word that comes in the wilderness, and to whom it comes, and the word that comes in the wilderness that actually speaks into something wonderfully new that's about to happen. And it says, and all flesh. Isn't that what you say in Advent? And all flesh shall see it together. Mountains brought down and valleys lifted up, rough places made smooth. If that is not an image of newness, of freshness, of vision, of a new opportunity, but the word could only be gotten in the wilderness where it could be heard. Because when you're riding on an institutional high and you've always been successful and you feel pretty adequate about yourself, sometimes God can't break through. I didn't come to argue that God sends us into the wilderness, though I think I could make a case for it. In fact, when we get to Jesus, the book says the Spirit, same Spirit you're talking about yesterday, that gave unbelievable, miraculous, supernatural power. Oh, it wasn't all that supernatural. But it was miraculous because people were hearing stuff in their own tongues that they hadn't heard before, even if they had heard it. Who knows? Same Spirit drives our Lord and Savior into the wilderness for this period of formation. I heard one commentator say it was a kind of a boot camp. It was a testing period. It was a forging period. Maybe more about that in the next two pieces. So I want to say to you that the truth telling is we're in the wilderness. And whether or not it's our denominational malaise, it's the most energetic malaise I've ever experienced. Because everybody's hyped up about a very short list of usual suspect conversations. But not everybody's talking about all of the same things. Bishop McKee, I want to say to you and to the lay and clergy of this annual conference, I am blown away that given everything else we've got going on, that you are actually able to walk and blow bubbles at the same time. I don't want to blow off what we've been dealing with for 50 years. I want to reach a place of resolution, but I don't want to forget that we live in a church that has more than once defined itself constitutionally around the lines of race. And sociologically, we've defined ourselves more than once around the lines of economic caste. We've defined ourselves around gender. Are you hearing me? We've defined ourselves around violence. And God knows we live in a world and in a nation that is addicted to violence. That sounds like a wilderness to me, but a vision of a hopeful future. Oh, come back to the Bible again. They shall beat their swords into plowshares. See, I don't hear many folks talking about that when sabers are rattling about we need more this and more that, and if we just armed everybody. I'm not against anybody's constitutional rights. I'm just trying to figure out how Greg Palmer gets more lined up with Jesus of Nazareth, who by everything I read, at least only his popularity, to speak nothing of his substance, could have raised an army at any time. How they would have done, nobody knows, but against imperial Rome, but could have raised an army. Dr. Wilson was talking to us about gradations of spirituals, 4 categories, I think you said, but one came to mind when I think about Jesus, the peace lover. Could I even say pacifist? I don't know. We don't have any evidence. I don't even know if that word was in currency then. All I know is that my foreparents, when they looked at him on the cross, said, and he never said a mumbling word. Seemed to be more concerned about taking care of others. So I'm not against your or my constitutional rights, but I am for Christians and the United Methodist Church getting lined up with Jesus. And he does ask of us some absolutely ridiculous things. They're counterintuitive. Somebody strikes you on the one side, turn the other cheek. Seriously, dude? I mean, how much Holy Ghost do you have to be restrained from not responding? I can hardly not cuss when I'm in my own car driving. And you want me to turn the other cheek when somebody comes at me? I mean, I'm talking about physically. I'm not talking about their verbiage and cussing me out. And somebody rips out in front of me, and I want to say you, and I engage. I don't curse, but I do engage in the damnation of the wicked in non-theological terms. So I don't want you to be mad at me, but I'm saying some of the things that Jesus asked of us literally run against the grain of most of our natural instincts. But I know there were a few people that were already pious and holy before you ever met Jesus. I know that. But back to the wilderness. What's going on there? It's a place where a whole people were being formed. A place where the word, if you come to Isaiah 40, the word came in the wilderness. Maybe the word had been knocking on the door all along, but it was heard. Of course, when you're in exile and you're looking for a way out, you can hear better. I mean, I think it's, we would say, between a rock and a hard place, your gluteus maximus caught in a sling, We've got some other ways to say it. And then Jesus, driven by the Spirit of God, after this palpable affirmation of his divine sonship, and then into the wilderness. So a couple more things and I'll quit. I said I was going to quit, but I think the wilderness for Israel and for us could be described as inhospitable, disorienting, filled with privation, fraught with danger, sometimes even feeling like it's devoid of hope. But if God is involved in the wildernesses of our lives, I wonder if the wilderness is a time, I want to talk about United Methodists now, for us to be released from the old ways and oppressions that actually made us think we were riding on top, but we were really in bondage. Let me say that one more time. Maybe in this season, and I'm not going to say what God did and what God didn't do. I wish I was that wise in the matters of the Holy Spirit. But 3 delays of the General Conference. I don't know if God caused that. Don't put that out there that I said that. It's on the tape, so if you're going to quote me, get me straight now. But I do believe the witness from the Apostle Paul that testified in all things, God is working for good. It didn't say that God caused them for good. Some people have taken it literally. And that's the kind of carrying on you get when you don't have anything better to say. And sometimes, silence actually works. Somebody dies tragically in a grocery store in Buffalo on a Saturday afternoon trying to get the eggs to bake the cake and the Sunday dinner. I hope no preacher stood over that casket and over that gravesite and said, Lord, we bend to your will. Are you hearing me? But what I do think Paul meant, and I think this is credible from the Greek text, that God is active in causing some things, mostly bringing us into being and existence, the created order. But let me say this. In the things that happen, I think the theological assertion is God gets at work in the middle of all of that to bring good out of it. There was nothing good about the Israelites being in Egyptian slavery for hundreds of years. But when God spoke and Moses, got the resistance movement going, and ultimately, in fits and starts, they were led out of Egypt. I used to hear the old preachers blow up that thing when they finally got into the water, which we know wasn't all that deep. But nevertheless, when you're fleeing an enemy, it all matters. So its point was not how many feet of water. But I used to hear the old preachers say that when the Israelites got through and the water came rushing back, Their image was just to make sure, they say that God sent an angel that got in there and undid the chariot wheels of the Egyptians. I don't have any problem hearing that as poetry and believing it as truth, that in all things God will work to bring good out of it. So I want to say, I think God is mightily at work at our time, mightily at work in our church, and mightily at work in our society. Now, sometimes I wish the evidence that I could affirm would be a little more clear a little sooner. But I'm still going to hold on. They that wait, it's a wilderness text, upon the Lord shall renew their strength. Secondly, what if the wilderness was about our really engaging in radical trust in God even when we can't see? See, one of the problems of our high level of development in Western culture, and this is true in other places as well, is, we like to control and we want to go from conception to conclusion. We're not good at waiting at all, and we're not good at not knowing the answer. But there's a lot in the book that says we got to just sometimes wait on the Lord. Waiting is not a passive activity. It's an opportunity for us actually to focus in and begin to see what we couldn't see before. And so out of even our waiting on God, we begin to sense a vision for a new future. Abraham Joshua Heschel talked about the wilderness times of Israel as times in which the Israelites could begin to pay attention to the God and rock of their salvation with awe and sense the wonder of God. When you become so adequate and so equipped as we are in the modern world, we're functionally atheist more than we're not. I mean, we think we don't need much God. It's kind of like, I got this. What if the wilderness was a time to let life be ordered around what really matters and not just about what we thought mattered? What if in the wilderness seasons it was a time for sorting and a time in which, to use our terminology out of our church culture and history and theology, a time for real conferencing? Mr. Wesley said that in conferencing, in our conferring together, we do it that we might come to a better result than we would if we were trying to do it on our own. Finally, I want to leave you with this picture. Walter Brueggemann, several years ago, preached a sermon, and he may have preached it a gazillion times, who knows. But he did a sermon when the commandments came up in the lectionary cycle. And I love it. I want to leave it with you. He entitled his sermon, when the text from the Hebrew Bible was about the 10 Commandments, Strategies for Staying Emancipated. Strategies for staying emancipated. Now, here's what I want to say, playing off of that, but not so much literally. We're at a turning point as United Methodists. I don't have to be that smart, but have I got any witnesses? Yeah, okay, I just want to know if I'm in the right house. We're at a turning point. Don't go for the head fake, and don't fall for the okey-doke. That when we reach a place to which we will apply the term resolution about our dilemma over human sexuality and Christian life. Are you hearing me? That somehow or another there are no more mountains to be climbed. That's a seduction. And I'm deeply fearful that our church will think that when we get that checked off the list, and checked off depends on your location, your viewpoint. Some people are checking it off by saying, I'm out of here. Others are checking it off by saying, I shall not be moved. And there's a melody line and there's a desk hand, because there's another chorus, another group of voices saying, I shall not be moved. And all I want to say is, don't assume that somehow or another we're going to have it all together when that is no longer the dominant discussion. So I'm going to end here. I'm not Dr. Cynthia Wilson, but I like music. I'm not any good at it, but I like it. I like the hymns in particular. I happen to grow up where I grew up hearing a lot of hymns by Charles Albert Tindley. He's got one. It's eschatological, but I don't want to die and go to heaven today. I don't want you to either. Hope you'll go to heaven, but I don't want you to die today. But I'm struck by the first verse of his famous hymn, Beams of Heaven. And listen to what it says, beams of heaven as I go. And the next words say, through this wilderness below, guide my feet in peaceful ways, turn my midnights into days. When in the darkness I would grope, faith always sees a star of hope, and soon from all life's griefs and dangers I shall be free someday. There's some other verses, but I'm gonna drop down to what I learned as the fourth verse, and as a way to encourage you. It says, harder yet may be the fight. I know you want the wilderness to be over, but Dr. Tindley said, harder yet may be the fight. Right may often yield to might. Wickedness a while may reign, and Satan's cause may seem to gain. But there is a God that rules above. And Dr. Tindley said, with a hand of power and a heart of love. And he said, and if I'm right, he'll fight my battle. I shall be free someday. I do not know how long 'twill be, or what the future holds for me or us, but this I know, if Jesus leads me, I shall be free someday. So I want to end up right there. Rest my case right there. If the master will lead us, and he's already trying, y'all. Maybe it is if we'll follow the master. That would be Jesus. All that we're looking for will open up to us. I do not know. Is she over? You over there? Okay, here. Let Cynthia, you sing. Don't fool with me. I'm in another register. I'm in another register. But you go on and bring it on in here now. Thank you.
Beams. Beams of heaven
this wilderness below. Guide my feet in peaceful ways. Turn my midnight into day. When in the darkness I would grow, faith always sees a star of hope, and soon from all life's griefs and dangers,
Lord have mercy.
I shall be free someday.
I do not
know how long 'twill be,
Yes.
nor what the future holds for me. But this I know, if Jesus leads me,
and I know He's gonna lead me.
I shall get home someday.
I think the only way I know how to describe this, our time together last night and today so far, is couched with everything that we're doing. It seems almost as if it's revival time in North Texas Conference. Can I get an amen? So thank you, Bishop Palmer, very much. We look forward to hearing you tomorrow as well. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So as we move to our next item of business, what I want to say, I think Tommy Brummet, am I right, Andy? Yes. I think Tommy Brummet is going to respond. So Tommy, what are you going to sing? Tommy Brummet, the pastor of the First United Methodist Church in McKinney, is going to offer some remarks and responses to Bishop Palmer's.
So it's ridiculous to think I could respond to that. Bishop, thank you. God bless you. God bless you. This day. I am not going to sing. And I was watching y'all. I was waiting for somebody to look at me and go, "You're fine. You're fine." How do I respond to that? Well, here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say, thank you, Bishop. What a gift. That is, I was pondering, I was listening to this as you were listening to this, and hearing about wilderness, and we've been through wilderness in that negative connotation. And we've buried dear friends. And we've said goodbye to dear friends. And we parted ways with dear friends. And those of you with pastors' hearts and those of you who love your churches, we've wept. And we've cried out. And we've wondered how long, what now, what next, what the heck are we going to do in this church we love, in this community we love? And Bishop, I just appreciate your honesty in talking about wilderness. And I just watched the Spirit move as you were talking, because I was thinking as you were talking about what a blessing this wilderness time has been in my walk. And literally, I mean that. During this wilderness time, I made a disciplined decision to walk every day. I walk 5 miles a day. Now listen, I don't want you to think I'm a Bible nerd, but it's a funny thing. I downloaded a Torah app, and I listened to the Torah every day as I walked during a wilderness time. And I found out the book of Numbers is pretty good. Yes? And here's what else I found. I found that the people of Israel, the Israelites, were in the wilderness exactly like you say, because they had been delivered from a bondage that they didn't even know anything different. It was all they ever knew. And they were delivered, so that they were grumbling in their deliverance. But the wilderness formed them and shaped them. And it's in the wilderness that we find these verses that Jesus quotes. Shema Yisrael. The Lord your God is one God. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. Deuteronomy 6:4. And it's in the wilderness that we find this verse that Jesus quotes. In Leviticus 19:18, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. It's in the wilderness that the people of Israel found the love of God and found their identity as the people of God. Together, Bishop. And I just want to say thank you for your honesty and your wisdom and your insight in helping us to see that wilderness time can become a time of blessing, where we remember who we are and whose we are and why we are here. May this be revival in the United Methodist Church, so that we can fully claim the love of God that we have received in Jesus Christ and be the compassionate, loving communities that God calls us to be. I just want to say, Bishop, thank you for your time. What an honor to even speak in your presence, and I will not sing. God bless you.
So thank you, Tommy. Appreciate that so very much. And again, thank you, Bishop Palmer. So we're going to see a video related to Providence Place, which is in San Antonio, which many of us remember as the Methodist Mission Home. So would you watch here one of our agencies which we support?
I was a victim of domestic violence. Some guy basically followed me places. I was followed when I took the bus to the grocery store. He would literally hover over me and watch me sleep. He would force me to tell him that I loved him when I didn't. I felt like he was literally pure evil. I ended up at the battered woman shelter and with the church people, and he did find out where I was. I applied to come to Providence. Once I got left in my room and I laid down on my bed, I passed out. I felt so relieved and I felt safe, and that was very important to me. We have the rotunda, which is like our living space, like our living area, which a lot of the girls come out and they watch TV together. We can take care of anything we need to do on the computers. There's another TV in there for us to relax. And then we all have our own bedrooms. We have the community kitchen. We help each other cook, and sometimes that's a good stress reliever for us, getting in the kitchen and cooking. Around 10 o'clock, programming usually starts. I definitely think the therapy and the setting boundaries classes specifically have made a big impact on me. I started to make changes, and all the staff started to see it in me. I have a friend that I've had to set boundaries with, and my parents, I've done some setting boundaries with them, and my relationship, I've got some good boundaries in place and I stick to them. After going through what I went through with my abuser, I had to check myself, and I realized that I didn't let him beat me. I never stopped fighting back. I want to be a good example and a good mother and just, do what's right in the eyes of God. I think that it's in our best interest for us to sit there and absorb what they're trying to give us here. If I wouldn't have come to Providence, I really don't know where I would have ended up at. I think that I could have possibly ended up on the streets. I have seen nothing but women benefit from the program here. There's plenty of help, and Providence is willing to reach outside of our box here to get more help for us if we need that help.
Stan Copeland is going to introduce a guest to the conference, new to us. And so, Stan, if you'd bring Carla Cardoza. Okay, hold on a second. So what we want to know is, Andy just shared with me that Terry Gutierrez may be in the house. Is she? Can you just bring greetings very quickly? Thank you. I'm sorry. That'll be fine, or you can come up here.
Sorry. No, it's okay. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? My name is Terry Gutierrez, and I'm from Providence Place. You just saw our video, and you know us as Methodist Mission Home from back in the old days. 127 years ago, our founder, Mary Valino, owned a house of prostitution in San Antonio, had some difficulties in her life, and met one of the ministers at Travis Park Church, Methodist Church in San Antonio, changed her life, changed her brothel into a house for vulnerable women, and we've been doing that for 127 years. Her story, I think about her all the time. Whenever I feel like I can't change or I'm feeling hopeless, how one person can change so many lives. We've helped thousands and thousands of women in these 127 years. A lot of you know us from adoption. We've been doing adoption for that long. over 6,000 babies placed in forever homes throughout these years in Texas, many with Methodist families, but all families, of course. And we used to have a program for adults with disabilities for 45 years, which we had to close in 2018 due to state funding changes. And we kind of went through a crisis as an organization. We've been doing that for so many years. What were we called to do next? And we went back to our roots, to Mary Valino, that woman who owned that brothel, and started this program, My Mariposa Home, for women who've been trafficked or survivors of sexual or domestic violence. They come and live with us for 18 months, and we give them a safe place to live, therapies to help them and support them, and job training and housing for them to eventually go back into the community. We also have several new programs. These are all new to us. We've rededicated our agency to help vulnerable women and young children back to our roots. We also have 2 other programs to prevent women from becoming trafficking victims. Young women aging out of foster care, almost 50% of them eventually fall into that category of vulnerable women if we don't give them help. So we've started programs for them. We have a youth shelter that we've started. And of course, we still do adoption. And we also have a parenting program where we serve 4,000 women with young children every year with free diapers, formula, counseling, case management. So I want to say for the North Texas Conference, you have supported us from our very beginnings, from 127 years ago, and we appreciate your support so much. We hope you'll support us as we move forward in these new chapters of our organization, as we change and grow. I have a table outside. I hope you'll stop in and visit. If you've been adopted out of our place, or adopted from us, I hope you'll come out and say hi and tell me how things are going with your families. And if you want to know more about us, or if you'd like for us to come out and speak in your churches, we'd love to do that. We'd love to talk about our story and how many lives it's changed. And it's only with your help that we've been able to do it. So thank you very much.
Amen. Thank you.
Bishop McKee, it's my privilege today to speak on behalf of the board at Lydia Patterson Institute and say a big thank you to the North Texas Conference, because the North Texas Conference has for many years been the strongest supporter financially and in every other way of leadership at Lydia Patterson Institute. We too have gone through challenges. We've heard that word a lot. The challenge that we had, in addition to all the rest, was that we needed to find a new president of Lydia Patterson Institute. Dr. Socorro de Anda, who has stood at this place many, many times through the years, after 37 years of service, has retired as of May the 31st. And so I want to give a shout out to Dr. Andy Stoker, who was the chairman of the board, who led a search that was an extensive search that led us right to El Paso to find one who was highly qualified in Carla Cardoza. And Carla comes to us as somebody who is very seasoned in administration and in school activity. She comes to us working on her PhD that I know she's going to be completed, and glad when it is. But she comes to us with a new vision, a freshness for our school, Lydia Patterson Institute. And so it's my privilege today to introduce for the very first time before the North Texas Conference, Carla Cardoza to come and bring us a word from the school.
Buenas tardes. My name again is Carla Cardoza, and thank you for having me here today. Today is my first annual conference going solo, so I'll do my best. So I just wanted to tell you that it's a joy to be here, and thank you. And I'm representing La Lydia, like our friends call Lydia Patterson. But before that, I wanted to say wow to Bishop Palmer and to Reverend Wong, because I'm also a JEDI advocate. JEDI standing for Justice, Equality, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. All my life, I have fought for racial justice, but also for social justice. So let me tell you a little bit about myself before I go on. I just want to tell you that I'm a native of El Paso and Juarez. And I'm a Mexican, Latina, Hispanic, Chicana, American female. I was a migrant worker when I was 11 years old, and I was picking cucumbers. So I can tell you that I see salads in a different light ever since. English is not my second language, but I'm very proud of my accent. Very, very proud. I've experienced a lot of injustice in the world firsthand, but I have also experienced a lot of good from people. So just to tell you the work that we do at La Lydia, I'm very proud because we are a bridge between El Paso and Juarez for a lot of kids who are vulnerable and need our help, but also we need them to teach us. So I'm not only energized to be here, I'm blessed and humbled, and my voice is breaking. And I'm humbled because I'm able to help a lot of kids, and I was one of them once. La Lydia provides hope and help to them for education, and we are happy to be able to say that we send 100% of our students to college and university. All of this is possible because of the generous help that you give us, your commitment, and also your encouragement. We're stronger, and we thank you for that. I want to finish by saying thank you for all you do, and I look forward for continuing working with the United Methodist Church and continue to do God's work. Thank you so much.
So Cami Gaston is coming to bring the Center for Leadership Development report. Let me just, as a word, we are going to finish the agenda for the day. We'll probably go to 4:45. When you leave, take everything with you. Your mother is not here to pick up after you, so I'm supposed to tell you that.
I'm so grateful to be a part of this cloud of witnesses this afternoon and really in the last day and a half. And I want to just begin by saying I'm part of the Center for Leadership Development and a great team that is next to me. So I want to tell you a little bit about this team and introduce them. Kelly Carpenter is our Associate Director. She's in charge of coaching and campus ministry and vocational discernment. Emma Williams oversees our faith formation and works with Justice Ministries. Joseph Bradley is our Director for Camping and Retreats Ministry. Liz Greenwell is our CART Crisis Team Director. And Mariel Vela holds us all together. She is amazing. We also have Marsha Middleton, who is sitting over here at the table as she is working hard on our behalf, and she has worked with us as the Board Ordained Ministry Officer. On July 1st, Marsha Middleton will be moving to a local church, and we are grateful for her service and the way that she served the Board of Ministry in this past several years. So you may be wondering who will be taking Marsha Middleton's place, and so I want to share with you, Kelly Carpenter will expand her role with vocational discernment, and Mariel Vela will become our ministerial services administrator. Kelly and Mariel are effective in their work. They have a lot of knowledge. They have gained confidence from all who they work with, and we are so grateful for their team effort with the Board of Ministry work, and they will begin in the next coming month to be those who cover all the Board of Ministry work. So I just wanted to let you know and congratulate them both on taking this new step and this new service to the conference. So thank you very much. With this said, I want to turn my attention to you. As I look around the room, I recognize many of the stories that you all have been going through with your ministries in the North Texas Annual Conference. You lay leadership and clergy leadership have been working in the church in quite the wilderness, as we've been talking about. And at times, I'm sure it's felt like a vacuum. And so I simply want to tell you that this team that is standing before you is on the journey with you. We are here to serve you, and we want to serve you in a variety of different ways. As you know, and many of you may not know, we have coaching and cohort groups that are here to serve you and be with you on the journey. We want to be present with you as we offer your churches interim ministers. And this last year, we've offered churches 12 times, all the churches that have needed help along the way. And so I just want to say thank you for all of our interim ministers who have stepped up to the plate in a moment's notice and gone to churches that are in great need. We provide a CART crisis team support when your church has experienced a crisis, and we provide consultation services when problems arise. Thank God for Liz. We also provide campus ministries in 6 locations, and it's really important for our young people to know that we are walking in faith with them and that we support them in their journey. Our youth and ministry programs are also provided all throughout the year through our conference, and we're thankful for the many churches that have partnered with us in order to provide young people a place where they can grow in faith. And we also have a marvelous intentional summer camping experience at Bridgeport. So today, I would like to highlight the work that we are doing to develop leaders through our camping and retreat ministry. Joseph Bradley will come now to tell you about how he is working with young people and developing leadership and forming young people in their faith. Joseph.
Thank you, Cammie. It's a privilege and an honor to be here talking to you today and talking about a true legacy of the North Texas Conference. For over 70 years, Bridgeport Camp and Conference Center has been a place where children, youth, and adults have been gathering to worship, study scripture, grow in their relationship with God and with one another. In fact, I would venture to guess that many of you sitting here today can think of time spent at Bridgeport Camp. In 2022, it's exciting for us for many reasons, not the least of which being that we have a full slate of summer camps planned. That includes 4 children's camps, 2 junior high camps, and 1 senior high camp. This is the first time we've been able to do this since 2019. More camps means more opportunities for children, youth, and adults from our conference to reap the benefits that camping has to offer. Now, people who have gone to camp or sent their children or grandchildren to camp probably understand well the things that make camp special. Camp is a place set apart from the everyday life of those who attend it. And when I talk about why camp is important, I like to compare it to learning a language. Yeah, sure, you can learn a language by going to a class, a couple hours, a few weeks, over years, but everybody knows that the best way to learn a language is to immerse yourself in that language, to go somewhere where the language is spoken all the time. And this is what camp is for our campers. Camp is a place where the language of faith is spoken from the time our campers wake up to the time they go to bed. It's a place where they engage in scripture in special ways, where they worship daily, where they're encouraged to ask questions and to grow in their faith alongside others. And if you've gone to camp, chances are you've experienced this firsthand. And if you haven't gone to camp, my only question is, what are you waiting for? In the past, we've had to rely on these ways of relating the impacts of camp to those who might not understand. But now we have more. This summer, we're excited to say that Bridgeport Summer Camp has been invited to participate in the Effective Camp Research Project. The goal of this project is to put some real data behind what we've been talking about when it comes to the impacts of camp. The Effective Camp Research Project was started in 2015, and they began by surveying over 1,000 campers across many different church camps. And campers were surveyed prior to coming to camp, after camp was over, and then they were contacted 2 months after camp and surveyed one last time, with the goal of this methodology being to get a baseline prior to camp, to see what had shifted over their time at camp, and then to test and see what lasting impact camp had on the lives of these campers. And so what did they find? They found that there are 5 fundamentals to a successful camp experience. Camp is faith-centered, safe space, participatory, unplugged from home, and relational. If these 5 things are in place, campers are going to have a good experience. And we work very hard to make sure that these essential components are part of our campers' experience. For example, we're constantly reviewing things like COVID policies, staying in compliance with Ministry Safe at all of our conference camps, as well as working to make sure that whether you've been coming to Bridgeport your entire life or this is your first summer at camp, you're going to feel comfortable and safe at our camp. And we all know Bridgeport Camp, it's a beautiful place. It's a place that's unplugged from the homes of our campers, where they get to participate in things like worship, Bible study, and activities that is not their local church. And over the past 4 years, we've gone to great lengths to make camp more participatory and relational for our campers by creating the Conference Camp Youth Leadership Program, or CCYLP, because you know we love a good acronym in the United Methodist Church. So we started the CCYLP in 2018 with the goal of being intentional about how we utilize youth leaders at all of our camps. And this year we're excited to say that we've expanded the program to all 7 of our camps, and we have over 50 7th through 12th graders in the program, some of which you saw at opening worship last night. So how does it work? Campers in 7th and 8th grade get the opportunity to be junior counselors at the junior high camp that they attend. The role of JC is to assist in leading small groups through the curriculum and to participate in a daily reflection time with other junior counselors. And when they get to 9th and 10th grade, they're given the opportunity to be junior counselors at children's camp. And their role is very much the same. They assist in small groups, and they participate in a daily reflection time with other JCs. But there's an added bonus here, because they're also modeling youth leadership for the children at camp. And finally, when they're in 11th and 12th grade, youth are given the opportunity to be what we call youth counselors at either children's camp or junior high camp. And their role is different than that of a JC. The YCs are the ones leading the junior counselors through their reflection time at camp. They also act as interns for our camp directors and get to see firsthand what it takes to make camp happen. And finally, they meet daily for their own reflection time with our CCYLP supervisor to talk about their experience and to do work on vocational discernment as they prepare for the next step in their journey. The desired outcomes are that youth are going to grow in their leadership skills and in their confidence by participating in small groups and reflecting on their experience. We also hope to retain CCYLP members year over year by building meaningful relationships. And this is going to help us to identify and attract the current and the future leaders of our conference. The overall goal is that we're trying to build a culture of youth leadership that begins with children at camp, seeing youth in leadership and thinking to themselves, I want to be that one day. And then giving them opportunities to serve through the rest of their time as junior high and senior high campers. Over the next few years, we plan to extend the CCYLP, JCs, and YC program to our non-summer camps like Camp Bible, Confirmation Camp, Midwinter, giving youth of our conference even more opportunities to grow and serve in their leadership abilities. Along with unifying our CCYLP program at all of our camps, we're also working to unify our curriculum so that our summer camp and our midwinter camp and our camp Bible camp, all of that curriculum works together so that we're getting one message and they're all complementing one another. Because what sets us apart from other camps is not just the pretty views, it's not just the cross on the hill, it's not just the opportunities to serve, but it's the faith-centered portion that is tied into everything we do at camp. Take a look at some of the results from the Effective Camp Research Project. The camp experience is overwhelmingly positive, and it's not just because it's fun. Things like I learned more about God, I was strengthened in my faith, my questions concerning faith were taken seriously. All of these things were affected a great deal by campers' experience at camp. And ours is no different. Our internal surveys consistently show small groups, curriculum, getting high marks at our camps. This is due in large part to the tremendous work of our curriculum writing team each year. For those who don't know, we use the same curriculum across all levels of camp, children through senior high. We rotate through 5 main themes with the idea that if you start in 3rd grade and you go through your senior year in high school, you'll get 5 full rotations through these themes. This year's theme is Church and Connection, and the title is Created to Be. I'm particularly excited about this curriculum because our lessons this year lean heavily into what make us United Methodist. So each lesson begins with a scripture, and then it uses that scripture to discuss a core UMC belief or idea. Things like our beliefs on baptism and grace, or ideas like the Wesleyan quadrilateral or social holiness. Because what makes Bridgeport Camp special is not just our faith, not just that we're faith-centered, but that you can know that when you send your children or your youth or even your volunteers to our camp, that they're getting a uniquely Wesleyan experience. The kind of experience they're not getting at Sky Ranch, the kind of experience they're not getting at Pine Cove, in fact, quite the opposite. We know that people have a choice, that churches have a choice as to where they go. But when you come to Bridgeport Summer Camp, you can know that not only are you getting the proven benefits of camp, but you're getting them in an environment that is scripturally sound, where they can experience God in nature, where they're encouraged to grow and ask questions about their faith, and they do all of this in a place that leans into our deep United Methodist tradition and theology. Remember when I said the campers are surveyed 2 months after camp? Well, this is what they found. Some of the results, they were camp highs. We know that. But some of them led to real lasting change. Increased self-confidence, more frequent devotional practices, increased church attendance, and more faith conversations and practices in the home. The truth is that we only get our campers for a short time, but if we can help to create some lasting change, then in a way our camp experience extends far beyond the 1 or 2 weeks of camp that we get. But if we want to maximize this work, we need your help. If we're committed to raising up the next generation of United Methodists, then we've got to make sure that the congregations that we send our campers back to are rooted in what makes us United Methodists as well. And that's where another CLD initiative that's been designed to assist local churches comes in.
If I asked you what makes our United Methodist Church unique or distinctive, what would you say? Well, I have all sorts of answers and ideas, but I think many of us wouldn't know where to start. Over a year ago, our conference decided to embark on a curriculum project called Wesleyan Roots, What Makes Us Distinctive. We asked Reverend Dr. Marcia Middleton to be our writer. Marcia has taught local pastors, lay leadership, and confirmands for many years, and she loves to teach about what makes United Methodist distinctive. We released Wesleyan Roots, a 13-chapter resource, at Laity Training in February. Our finished product comes in 3 languages, Korean, Spanish, and English. Each session comes with a facilitator's guide, student handbook, and video. All of these resources are on our website and can be downloaded for free. Yes, free! Our team has made these resources available to you so you can all answer the question about our distinctiveness with clarity, understanding, and joy. I love our grace-based theology. I love our understanding of free will. I love how social holiness calls us to make our communities more merciful, just, and compassionate. And I'd like to introduce you to the 12 presenters and invite you to embrace our unique and distinctive expression of the Christian faith as a United Methodist.
I'd like you to take a few minutes to look in your bags, and you'll see that there's a Wesleyan Roots flyer that's there. There's a QR code that you can go to if you'd like to go straight to the website. But if you'd like to just simply go to the website, ntcumc.org, go under the Center for Leadership Development, you will find the Wesleyan Roots curriculum there. You can download a PDF for the Facilitator's Guide and a PDF for the Participants Guide. There's also places where you can click onto each of the videos. I want to thank all the persons that helped make it possible, all the pastors that took the special time to make videos, and I commend you, this Wesleyan Roots curriculum. I hope it was helpful to you in your small group classes. Lastly, on the other side of this flyer, you'll see all the other things that are coming up for the Center for Leadership Development, and I hope you'll utilize it. This concludes our report for the Center for Leadership Development. I thank you all for your support and continual ministry together. Peace.
So again, I commend this resource to you. I want to say an announcement that the child care closes at 4:45. And so if you have children in the nursery or in child care, then you would need to get them by 4:45. And so that's a heads up about that. I believe we're getting ready to do awards, but there's another video of which I did not know about until just now. Am I right, Andy? Is that the way we... Okay.
United Methodist Women is now United Women in Faith. We've taken a new name to better reflect how we answer our calling today as part of the United Methodist Church. It's an exhilarating time as we commit to even greater inclusivity, action, and impact. Putting love in action isn't new for us. We've always been spiritual Christian women taking on the hard work of the world. As we enter this next era of leadership, we're listening and responding to what the world needs. Relevant new paths to join, easier opportunities to get involved, and meaningful ways to connect with each other. With exciting new programming to nurture your soul, flexible options to act boldly for justice, and accessible resources to help you grow and live your faith, our sisterhood is stronger than ever. We remain women of passion and power, united by God's love in our mission to support women, children, and youth. If you aren't already a member, we invite you to join us. Your talents, energy, and ideas are welcome. This work is essential, and your efforts will make all the difference. Get active and share your strengths in whatever way works for you, because love in action can change the world.
I think Julie Knoll, who's the president of, is in the house. I'm not sure. Could you just stand and we recognize you so people will know where you are? Julie, thank you very, very much. It has been a challenging time to do this, and I get your newsletter every time it's done, and I'm thinking, God, y'all do great work. Even in the midst of pandemic, you've learned to navigate this, and so I want to thank you, Julie, for the work you've done. Thank you. So now we have a few awards we're going to give, and so we will do this now. Ready?
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Emma Williams, and I work for the Center for Leadership Development, and it is my great honor to introduce you to Jillian Jackson, our Youth Award recipient for the Harry Denman Evangelism Award. And if you met her yesterday, you are lucky because you get to meet her twice, and she is an exceptional young woman and definitely worth your time. Jillian is a senior at Hamilton Park United Methodist Church, and she is an active leader of her church and the North Texas Conference Youth. She's a model of service and displays the servant leadership Christ calls his followers to emulate. Jillian serves in many ministries in Hamilton Park. She dances in the liturgical dance ministry. She has served as the chaplain of the Ignite Youth Ministry. She volunteers with Path to Nourishment team, where she sorts bags and distributes nutritious groceries to families in need, and in the Super Bowl of Caring Drive each year to fill the food pantry. Jillian was the only youth active in the Joyland Nursery renovation team, where she painted wallflowers, recovered furniture, and even created gift registries for the Hamilton Park families to contribute new nursery items. Jillian also devotes time to Backpack Blessings, where she sorts bags and distributes new backpacks and school supplies to the children in the community, and participates in the Socks of Love ministry for those in the community who are unsheltered. And that's not all. In her ministry with the North Texas Conference, Jillian has been a leader in the Conference Council and Youth Ministry for 4 years, serving as the activities chair for 2 of those terms. Jillian has led the students on CCYM and the students who attend Midwinter with great joy and confidence, always allowing space for her peers to express themselves and grow in their understanding of love of God. She was one of our speakers at the virtual Midwinter of 2020, where she offered a reflection on how we can use the gifts that God has given us and how we can recognize and encourage in others the gifts that God has given them. She has also been on the team of leaders for the new Conference Camping and Youth Leadership Program that you just heard about, where she's worked with camp directors and adult volunteers to lead small groups and other activities. Last summer, Jillian made such an impactful connection with her campers that she inspired a new student to sign up for CCYLP and begin her own Christian leadership journey. And Jillian also has been the Youth Metro District lay leader for the past 2 years. Jillian is a delightful blessing to all who know her and all who serve with her. With each area of ministry, she exhibits grace, compassion, knowledge, generosity, thoughtfulness, love, and faithfulness. Anyone who interacts with Jillian has felt the love of Jesus Christ. Her commitment to God and service shines through her, allowing everyone around her to experience the joy and grace that comes from the Holy Spirit. And with great thanks to Jillian's family and her youth director, Kathy Griffin, and her pastor, Dr. Sharon Patterson, we welcome Jillian as the Youth Harry Denman Award recipient.
The North Texas Conference 2022 Harry Denman Evangelism Award for Laity is awarded to Lonnie Thies. Lonnie, would you come up here while I brag on you just a little bit? Not sure where you are. As missions chair at First UMC in Terrell, Lonnie Thies saw the economic and racial divide in a historic town and dared to bridge that gap. Welcome. Lonnie organized First UMC Terrell to faithfully partner with Serenity Corner, a local ministry with Terrell's homeless and addicted population. Church members bring dinner and supplies to the folks there. The men who are served by Serenity Corner often come to worship at First Terrell and are welcomed by Lonnie and all the other members of the congregation. Lonnie's service to Christ not only is changing the lives of those being helped, but also the lives of the church members who have begun to know their neighbors from another part of town. In September 2021, Lonnie worked with a committee of community leaders to include Serenity Corner as a recipient of funds raised by the North Texas Giving Day. They planned and organized and spread the word and were able to raise more than $42,000, making Serenity Corner one of the most successful first-year participants of North Texas Giving Day. Lonnie has been named to the board of directors of Serenity Corner and serves as its treasurer. Pastor Peter McNabb of First UMC Terrell sums up the power of Lonnie's evangelism by saying, "Lonnie goes where needed and brings the backing and the support of the church with him. He leads with the love of Christ." Lonnie, thank you. Congratulations.
Lonnie, congratulations. Thank you so much for what you do. Thank you. I heard this story yesterday.
I want to be like Jillian when I grow up.
Yeah, okay.
The Clergy Denman Award winner goes to Reverend Joy Gonzalez, who is the pastor at Uptown Church. Now, I just need to tell you that I didn't know this until I called her, but we had recruited her to be a part of our conference several years ago, and she's won the Denman Award in her former conference as well. So, great recruitment. Reverend Joy Gonzalez, along with Reverend Elizabeth Mosley, worship leaders Jake and Allie Glover, have come together to create a dynamic leadership team for a new church start called Uptown Church. They gather every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. at the House of Blues for an inspiring message and incredible music. The House of Blues porch provides a place for meeting friends, drinking coffee before worship, and not to mention those who head out to downtown eateries after brunch. But what is truly exciting is what is happening in the worship community. With 125 new people worshiping each week, 21 adults offered a new profession of faith in 2021. People are being reached and lives are being transformed at this challenging time. One of the surprising facts about the Uptown Church is their Uptown Kids Ministry. Kids are welcome to join their parents in the music hall or hang out with a safe and fun environment, engaging in ministry just designed for them. One quick look at their website will lead you to a statement of belief that is clear and bold. Love without strings, grace without merit, relentless pursuit of diversity and equality, Jesus always with us, and live out your faith. I'd like to congratulate our winner for the Denman Clergy Award, Reverend Joy Gonzalez and the Uptown Church. Thank you so much for your ministry. I want to share with you a little bit about the One Matters Award. The One Matters Award is a part of the Discipleship Ministries, and it comes with a $1,000 gift for ministry. We give this to the church that has gone from 0 to at least 1 new profession of faith, and making the statement that every person matters that comes to your church. So I'm going to give this over to Owen Ross, Dr. Owen Ross, as he's sharing our recipient for the One Matters Award.
It's appropriate that the One Matters has a number in its title. I know there are those that think the cabinet only thinks about numbers. Well, I want to say it's not the only thing we think about, but I will speak for myself in that I do think about numbers, because I know those numbers represent lives. Those numbers represent families. Those numbers represent souls. And I want to ask Argyle United Methodist Church that a congregation that congregates around 300 each Sunday had the largest increase in professions of faith of all of our churches in the North Texas Conference, having this past year 25 professions of faith, including going from 0 to 8 confirmands. Let us give thanks to the Lord for the work of Argyle United Methodist Church and Pastor Rick Williamson.
I'm Reverend Cheryl Murphy, and the chair of the North Texas Conference Commission on Christian Unity and Interreligious Concerns. One of our responsibilities is to decide who will receive the Bishop Oden Award. You'll find details of this on page 19. The award began in 2014 in Bishop Oden's name, reflecting his passion for interfaith dialogue. Although this faithful work may bring out our differences, it also reminds us of the common ground that we all share. The first receiving the Bishop Oden Award for this year is Leah Parka. Leah has created, come on up, all of you. She's got a whole team with her, her crew is here. But Leah created a body and soul ministry in partnership with her crew at St. Paul's United Methodist Church over 25 years ago. They serve the homeless a hot and hearty breakfast on weekends when no others opportunities for meals were possible. Leah and her team invited other churches and organizations to partner with them. During the pandemic, they didn't let it go. They created to-go bags with breakfast sandwiches and other portable goodies. They have served meals, and let me tell you how many. Over 1,300 weeks they've been serving meals, over 78,000 meals, and 85,000 cups of coffee. We celebrate Leah and her team from body and soul. Our second award goes to First United Methodist Rockwell for their leadership with 7 other churches in Rockwell County for creating faith leaders for radical justice. It has been a team effort to fulfill their mission as a multiracial organization of leaders and faith. They work together to fulfill the mission of multiracial organizations of leaders of faith called together to foster collaboration between the communities of color to achieve racial justice by bridging the divides through listening and learning, equipping faith leaders and their communities to be agents of racial healing, and identifying and transforming the driving of systematic racial injustice, and taking prophetic action alongside those who historically have been denied equal justice and opportunity. We are grateful to our Methodist brothers and sisters for their faithful work in Rockwell County. And finally, we could not recognize this next one, and so our committee is not really presenting an award, but recognizing them in the spirit of the bishop. There was sacred ministry under the leadership of the Catholic Charities that came together in the spring of 2021 as Christian churches provided Sunday evening worship for the young men of forced migration housed in the Dallas Convention Center. There were many involved in this challenging and important witness, and Bishop, you were there yourself, I know, on Easter night. Our Latino pastors and bands came to offer hope and encouragement on their assigned evenings. While they were visiting with these young men, they asked them to write prayers on little index cards. These prayers were shared with many of the congregations in the North Texas Conference. And although these young men have now found their way to new lives, I find myself, and I know it's true for many of you, that we are still praying for their well-being and their productive lives. There were so many young, and they were so young and yet enduring the weight of their families and escaping the dangerous realities of their broken homelands. I wanted to share one of those cards with you, and I asked my sister clergy to come and share one.
Quería pedirles ayuda con oración sobre mi viaje. Fue difícil dejar a mi familia y todo, pero la necesidad nos obliga a hacerlo. Gracias a Dios, ya estoy aquí en Dallas. Solo me falta otro paso más y llegaré a mi destino, primero Dios.
In case your Spanish isn't as perfect as Martha's, let me share what that said. Thank you. I want to ask you for a prayer for my voyage. It was difficult to leave my family and everything, but it was necessary. The situation obligated me to do so. Thank you, Lord, that I am here in Dallas. I only have one more step to take, and I will get to my destination. We thank our clergy, brothers and sisters that are part of our Latino churches and the wonderful music and witness they were able to offer hope in a time of real hopelessness for those young people. That concludes our award.
So just as Stan Copeland comes to have a prayer for us before we leave and a brief testimony as he comes, I simply want to say a word about the ecumenical, you can go ahead and come, Stan. The ecumenical movement in Dallas has just gotten richer in the last 2 or 3 years, and the partners that we have with, as United Methodists or others, none of us can say enough about Catholic Charities and the work that they organize and what they do. And simply we could not be able, their partnership made so much possible in so many different ways. And I simply want to make a shout out to the Catholic Charities.
Bishop.
All right, I was told these prayers were to involve a witness as well.
Bishop, we have some announcements before the prayer.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's all right. First announcement, all clergy are reminded that you need to check in with your districts. You know who you are, and so do your districts if you haven't. Everyone also, if you haven't picked up one of the bags, they're outside each door. One of the conference bags, do so as you leave today. They will not be available tomorrow, and you're invited to bring them back tomorrow. Also, there is an auction, perhaps you noticed it in the Ministry Center concourse. Peace with Justice organization is having the auction, and they fund grants in local churches for Peace with Justice ministries, so look at that. Then finally, prayers for one of our clergy, Shiv N, has been ill. He's been in the hospital. He was hoping to be here to participate tonight in the ordination service and commissioning service. He will not be able to be here, so if you could keep him in your prayers as he recovers.
Okay, thank you. I want to remind you that our service of ordination begins this evening at 7 o'clock in this sanctuary. So stand.
All right. Thank you, Bishop.
Thank you.
I got in touch a few days ago that I was grieving, and I know many of us have been grieving. And I was on my way to Tanzania for a preaching mission there with the Tanzanian Annual Conference, and I was grieving. And on the day that I was to leave, Uvalde happened. And my heart was even heavier to be leaving the country and separating from that event. But what I found in Tanzania was United Methodist that gave me hope and joy, even in the midst of the grieving. My first sermon to the United Methodists who gathered there throughout Tanzania started with the memory from my time at First United Methodist Church in Houston, which was from 1986 to 1993. I remembered that we had an annual revival in July, and every year the revival started out the same way with a theme song. Now, had I known Cynthia and Bishop Palmer were going to sing, I probably would have chosen not to do this, but it went like this. Everybody ought to know, everybody ought to know, everybody ought to know who Jesus is. He's the lily of the valley. He's the bright and morning star. He's the fairest of 10,000. Everybody ought to know. I woke up every morning in Tanzania singing that song in my early morning devotional. And I decided that I would just teach it in English to the Tanzanians at the conference. I was encouraged to do so because one of my newfound friends said that my Swahili sucked. Bishop Monde Muambo encouraged me to teach the song, and we sang it every day. And the smiles that lit up the African faces in Tanzania looked so much like the smiles that lit up the Houstonians' faces in downtown Houston. You know, it's a song that really is our clarion call. In the midst of our divisions, we have so much that we share in common. You know, we can say that other religions proclaim truth, and they do. We can say that other pursuits of God that aren't Christian aren't wrong. But we're called to witness to what Jesus has done in our lives and what Jesus is doing in our lives through the power of the Holy Spirit. And we should not shrink from the charge to proclaim Jesus as Savior and Lord, and to do so with love and joy and peaceful respect for one another. We can claim Him as the lily of the valley, the bright and morning star, the fairest of 10,000, whom we pray everyone will know. Perhaps my greatest grief is that what we do with our witness as United Methodists to a world in need, in the midst of our divisions. You know, a word I heard a lot in Tanzania was the word global, in reference to our ministry together. And lately we hear the word global in reference to a name of Methodists forming a new denomination, and some even in our conference contemplating that. The global Methodists seek a homogeneous denomination regarding belief, But their seeking to be global is a holy pursuit. We should all seek to be global. But I do want to remind us that John Wesley was not one for homogeny. Our founder never sought uniformity in all things. And for most United Methodists, we don't either. We do find our unity in essentials and are willing to offer our hands to each other because our hearts are in agreement that we should love alike. Wesley said, "The world is our parish, and the global nature of the church would be quite pleasing to him." You know, the question is, will United Methodists throughout the globe walk away from the global board of ministries and all the good that is done through the connection and leave the cross in flame that is so powerful in the countries throughout the world? And also vacate those special relationships cultivated through the years. I think we need to recognize that the work that we do globally has been a long time in coming in its efficiency and effectiveness that we see today. And it would not easily be duplicated by any new denomination. I think that we will see global as a word that we can share and a word that we can embrace. What my Tanzanian United Methodist experience affirmed is that the circle best widely be drawn to include as many as possible in our culturally diverse and very complex denomination. Our mission fields are different. Our approaches are quite unique and varied. But the theology of grace and the warm heart, our doctrinal standards, the three simple rules, to do no harm, to do good, and to stay in love with God, as well as the foundation in Scripture, should always unite us. Personally, I've marveled at how vastly different and yet how very much alike we United Methodists are. I've witnessed the power of the global ministries and the work of saving lives. And my confession is that I have not learned enough, nor have I shared enough about what the good of our apportionments and our ministry together does throughout the world. I'm working on that. United Methodists at our best, and historically, have very much been externally focused on who else can we help? Who else can we bring into God's saving grace? We love when the Holy Spirit causes us to ask, to whom can we offer the needed excellent educational experiences worldwide? Or the life-sustaining health care? Or emergency responses of our Corps in the midst of our natural disasters and atrocities of war? Not to mention so much good that goes on locally in our mission fields, here and abroad. Global, it's a holy pursuit. This is my testimony. This is my witness. Let's pray. Lord God, slow us down enough to give you thanks for the joy that you bring into our lives sometimes when we least expect it and sometimes when we need it the most. We thank you for what has gone on here today, Lord, in our annual conference, and how thankful we are for the good, the really good, that goes on in our work together. Lord, we pray that in the midst of this turbulent time, that you will calm the waters, that you will cause us to see all that we have in common, all that we share that is from you, and especially the power of the meaning of the word global in our outreach and in our mission. Lord, send us forth into this evening of celebration of our ordinands and those who will be commissioned. And we'll be careful to give you the honor, glory, and praise. In the name of Christ Jesus, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Stan. Thank you very much. So we are now adjourned. We have ordination service at 7 o'clock, and we begin again in here at 8 a.m. in the morning.